Hey guys, how you going? Welcome to the Positive Experience podcast, where we look at the good, the bad and the ugly in living your best life. Today's segment is called In the Trenches, where we look behind the scenes at what's happening in the clinic. Hey guys, welcome to our Trenches chat today. This is the first of its kind. It's our first roundtable talk. We've got the whole team here, the boys, and today we're going to be reviewing our blog post, the information we put out for the month of October, which was strength training. Now, linked to this video, feel free to drop onto our website. I'm just sharing my screen. Give me one moment. And if you go to our website, click on this button here, it'll take you to the individual blogs that we're referencing. So I'm just talking about what seems to work for me at home. Mike's talking about his running game. Con with some neck strength, which is interesting given his injuries, and what Avi's doing at home with his gym program. Okay, so feel free to jump to our website, check out those blog posts. That's the context of our round chat today. So we're going to start off with Avi's program, what the big guy does to keep the brain nice and big, but also the biceps.
So as you probably would have seen in my blog post, talk about my current strength program. So it was a very strength-based program I chose. Just being in lockdown, restricted with equipment. So it was a lot of barbell and dumbbell work that I had to end up splashing some cash on. It's not cheap these days because it's in high in demand and no one has anything in stock. So I had to go pay the big bucks. Everything I earned was pretty much spent on that. But it's worth it in the long run. At least I got it at home and it'll be there for like years to come. And yeah, so training was more of a upper-lower split. Did it 4 days. And if you read in the blog post, I did overload myself early, but I realized that's not going to work because that's what I've done in the past. And I kept on going and got injured. So a little bit smarter in that aspect. And now it's just more upper-lower 4 days a week. And I'm slowly changing my program again because we got the good news, November 8th, that the gyms are going to be opening up. So I can do some more machine work and get more some isolation stuff in and go more into the muscle building stage instead of just working on strength. Any questions from you boys from the program or from the blog post?
I actually have one. So, Avi's program is pretty in-depth. Like when you guys check out his blog post, he does put down a lot of bits and pieces. But what did your program look like last year? Like, have you found that in the last 12 months your strength program has changed heaps, or is it much the same?
From last year, 12 months, probably now. So last year was probably when I first really started getting into my training because that's what I sort of got with my coach, MD, Strength Revolution, shout out to him. So pretty much I was training with Nathan Ketai before that, going pretty hard. He loves the overload and just the general pump, but my coach pretty much sat me down. He said, you're just overloading your body too much, putting your spine through too much stress. So I had to reevaluate. So this time last year, I'd say it was pretty similar, but I was still doing a bit too much. And now as I'm lifting a little bit heavier, I've got more rest days because if you're lifting heavier, the body needs a rest instead of trying to go the no pain, no gain kind of route. That's what I've always done in the past. So I'll probably say similar program, but probably added a bit more rest days.
Nice. Any questions, lads?
No, that was quite concise. Thanks,
Yeah, I actually
Avi.
had a question for you, Avi. When it comes to your training, do you prefer to do it alone, or do you find some value with having people around you kind of on the same mission? For me personally, I struggle to just kind of get into the mood at home. That's why I kind of opted for the cardio work instead. But for you, is that something that you don't have trouble with getting into kind of the mindset of I'm going to pump the iron on my own, or do you prefer just doing it in the gym?
It's funny you ask that question because I actually had that thought the other day. It just randomly popped in my head because I've always been someone that trained with like-minded people in the past. But as I've gotten more into physio and really working on the technique, I've gone the complete opposite. I prefer to train solo, and that's when I perform best. Reason being, as I say, I'm the technician, so everything, nitpick everything. So if Lecky's training with me, he's doing a squat, I'll distract my training to go fix what's going on there. And then
there's a lot going wrong there.
And then especially when I've got mates that always want to train, or just someone that I know is needs a little bit of work, I just say no, or I do my workout beforehand and then catch up with them. Because I don't know, when I train in the garage with my sister or my missus, exact same situation. I just have to nitpick everything, and they get annoyed, but I just can't help myself. So to answer your question, I prefer training solo.
He's got the technician goggles happening.
That's it. It's the man cave.
Awesome. So we'll move over to Mike. So again, guys, check out Mike's blog post. He's just started up some running, which he can share with us. We've shot a previous Trenches video where he does talk us through that. But same sort of setup. I'd like to ask you, Mike, how what you've been doing, like training wise, before COVID, say 12 months ago, and how you've enjoyed your running most recently.
Yeah, so I was like RV, where I preferred just a gym setting, easy to just get into the morning. And smash out what you need to and then get into work. But since everything closed down, I just, as I said, I couldn't find the motivation to do it in the room setting. I really need, kind of people with the same mindset, or just the equipment really is what I needed. So I tried running. So running for me, it was a bit haphazard in the last year. So I'd kind of try it here and there. Wasn't too good at it. Took a lot of willpower to get into the running mindset, especially with cardio. But what preceded the running this year, was I ended up buying a road bike. So I actually found that my gains from there, endurance-wise, actually transferred into the running. So it kind of made the sport a bit easier, a bit faster, which I think is motivating for me. So at the moment, I try my best to do 3 times a week. So that's either a 3K or a 5K. I haven't been consistent with 10Ks at all, but 3 and 5s, I've really been getting some good numbers on those. And as I outlined in the blog, I tried something called a negative split, and that means you're trying to start off slow and then end off quick. Whereas I had the other thing happening in my mind, where I really wanted to smash at the beginning and kind of just slave around with the last few kilometers. But I found that really hard and really taxing, and it was really hard to get into the next run thinking I'm going to start really hard again. So with the negative split, just from the mind state perspective, it was really easy for me to continue with that. So 3 times a week is what I'm going for right now.
And I've got a question straight off the bat, right? So we all know that cyclists and runners, they usually have big, strong calves. When I'm driving by and I see cyclists, I really envy their calves, big, strong muscles. They also have a really efficient heartbeat, So do you know what your resting heart rate would be at the minute?
I could probably pull it up on my watch right now. It's sitting at 79 at the moment, probably a bit nervous. It was 69 4 minutes ago.
Cool.
So that's what I'm sitting at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, because with the cyclist Lance Armstrong, his resting heart rate I think was high 30s. So just imagine this big old heart that's pumping one efficient pump versus the rest of us normal people, like our heart's going to be pumping a lot faster. So apart from running conditioning, like it's great heart conditioning as well. Like, have you noticed that too? Like when you are running versus the bike versus maybe if you're walking across the street, or if you're walking a lot more in the shopping centers, or anything like that, do you notice your conditioning's improved? Like you get a puff as easily?
Yeah, 100%. There's been a big improvement in that. As I wrote in the blog, I think like the first 3 kilometer I ever tried took me like 30 minutes. So that's a 10-minute average. It's pretty poor. Like sometimes I walk faster than that now. But now recently I've hit my goal. I ran 5 under 5, about 4:42 was that one. So I'm just noticed that I can run at the time I used to run at, but it's a walk in the park now. But if I'm trying to push myself, it's still a bit of a slog.
Well done. How about you, Con? Are you a bit of a runner out on the land in the country?
I used to be a runner, not anymore. Now I'm kind of actually like hiking and walking, to be quite honest.
Nice. How about you?
So I've got a couple of questions, but I'll answer the running. I do like my running, but I just can't find the motivation to start running. Like I wanted to ask you, like once you start running, do you run because you have to run, or you just get in the groove of things and everything just starts flowing, or is it more, I have to do this. This is the kilometers I've got to set out. I have to, and the other question was, does it make a difference if you got a scenic route coming up, or like if you change your routes, or is it always the same run you always do?
So with the first one, for me, the motivation is usually beating myself. Or if you have a few other fellas on your Strava list that are running a bit faster than you, that's also a good motivator. And I can't say I kind of set it out and I'm really like sticking to a timetable. There are some days where I do get back from work and I've just got a heap of energy. I just want to expel it somewhere. And if there isn't, gyms open, I just get out there and just try to get after it. Doesn't happen a lot, especially after work. But yeah, there's moments of just having heaps of energy to expel, and other times where I'm like, I want to beat this number. So for me, the number was I wanted to get 5 kilometers under 5 minutes average. So once I hit that, now I'm just going to try to push it even further. In terms of the other question, what was it again?
I was more like, if you got like a scenic route or a specific route, do you run better? Like, let's say you're running along a lake, or it doesn't really matter to you. A run's a run.
Yeah, I just do what's familiar with me. Yeah, I've got a typical route that I run that just from experience. I know my typical 3K, I know my typical 5K just around my house here. But the other day I ran around Albert Park Lake, and just that's fun as well. I like to have a point A and then point B instead of just doing laps of somewhere. I like a destination to run to instead of just a target to hit. So for me, that's a motivator as well.
Nice. Thanks for that. Great, Mike. So what we'll do is we'll move over to Con and he'll shed some light on maybe if you can share us preface with a bit of the history on why the neck strengthening may be important for you, Con, and we'll lob some grenades at you. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, sure. The neck strengthening was essential for me because I had quite a couple of serious car accidents where I was hit from behind and someone driving the wrong side of the road, head-on collision. So I had I had prolapsed discs in my fourth, fifth, sixth cervical vertebrae. And I tried to manage them with conservative therapy. It helped, but they were quite sort of pronounced. So I had neck surgery. And initially it was actually much worse. Then it was a slow period to recover at many different fields actually. And I realised I was left with pain right down the left arm and permanent cervical pain. So for me, it was essential to build up my sort of neck flexors. And what I did, which, we tell this to patients, but I realised that my scapula needed to be in a retracted position, and I need to really take the pressure off the lower middle traps because we tend to have overactive upper trapezius. And if you think of that under tension, the muscles insert into the base of your skull, so not just cervical pain, but headaches. So yeah, that's why I embarked on that program.
So when was your first accident? They sound really nasty, mate. I'm sorry to hear it, but it sounded like you had a couple of issues there. And so did you find each time you bounced back from the car accidents, how did you find that? Because we may not have car accidents, but I think we've all sustained repeated issues and injuries. How did you find that?
I actually had more than two, but I just named those two. I was brought up to be very stoic, son of immigrants from Europe, sort of post-World War II, civil war, economic hardship. So mum grew us up, and that's a strength, but I was my own worst enemy because I would be getting back in my mindset. I thought I could get back to where I was. So I'd push the boundaries so much where I'd break down again.
Strong silence.
So, yeah, exactly.
Pros and cons.
Yeah. So I thought that was unrealistic because I could always beat anything. Like, I had some heart issues when I was young. I overcame them, ran across country the following year. I never thought anything of it. But this was something that sort of, it was humbling, that's for sure. That's why I really embarked on a sort of neck scapular strengthening program.
You know, I think it's one when like a health practitioner has come back from setbacks and injuries. So I think you have a superpower there because you actually know what it feels like to come back from surgery. So it's a good way to win rapport with people. Just out of interest, like out of the lads here, has anyone here not had surgery before? Avi, Mike, you surgery free?
I don't know if it counts. I once had a broke and it got kind of twisted back properly.
Yeah. Oh, your tongue?
So nothing invasive. No, nose. Broken nose.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that. We'll give that a pseudo surgery. Cosmetic surgery.
I don't think I don't broke my ankle when I was like real young, but I don't think I had proper surgery. I think I was just in a cast. I can't remember. I was trying to do a Maradona turn, and I was in kindergarten, and I tripped and landed on and I got carried to hospital. Carried to the sick bay and then taken to the hospital. That's all I really remember. But all my mates back at home always joke about that. Still try and joke about that trick I try to do, but I haven't had any real big surgeries, touch wood, in a positive way. But does the wisdom tooth count? My question was to you, like going back, because you did suffer a little bit of complications after the surgery.
Yeah.
Would you go through that surgery pathway again, or knowing what you know now, especially with the strengthening pathway, the exercises, or would you try a better approach to the conservative side?
That's a great question. I got a few recommendations from surgeons, and their recommendation was operate immediately. One well-respected one from Austin. It was that severe that I probably should have had operated on shortly after, because it was actually compressing my spinal cord as well and the nerve roots. But I would say I've treated people, like a friend of mine who had similar symptoms, but it wasn't as serious. I would always go through the conservative route. Always. Like physiotherapy, hands-on, does help. And with the strengthening together, it compounds the treatment. It's fantastic. What I would say is with someone, if you're not getting significant results within the first 6 months, which is critical, and you have been seeing physiotherapy, you have been astute with your strengthening program, do consider surgery. So I was told by various people, you need to have surgery, but I was like, no, I'll beat this. So it was 2 years later that I had surgery.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, you definitely weren't looking for the exits, that's for sure.
And I had a question for you also. How long were these car accidents, and are you experiencing any symptoms at the moment?
Yeah, look, it was 2007, 9, I think then 12. I forgot I had 4 all up. Mike, you wouldn't believe it. But the symptoms I do have is if I tend to do a lot of heavy manual work, just doing stuff around, you can get referred symptoms down the arm, like a numbing sensation. But cervical pain is basically, there's always something there. Upper thoracic spine tension, sometimes headaches. So the exercise does help alleviate everything. That's for sure. That's something that I definitely recommend. Like I actually do an exercise program where I stretch the whole spine, and then do core stability work, back strengthening stuff. It does help. It really does. That's for sure.
Right. I think that's, before we transition over, I think it's important that your testimony here of surgery being a viable option, but it's not the finish line. You continue to do the work. You need to still stay strong and supple. And so sometimes I empathize with people that we help that, I don't blame them that they see the surgery as the primary focus. When I get to the other end of the surgery, it's going to be magical and I'll be brand new again, which may not often be the case. You may get 60% of the way there, 40% you got to keep working, or 80%. But, I think a lot of the work that we do in educating people is just painting a real picture of how things are. So, yeah, I appreciate your honest feedback there, Con, and the work.
And what's interesting, Lecky, is that because a lot of people look at me and they don't think I've actually got any injuries or I'm not in pain. And when you listen to them and they sustain injuries, and mostly a lot of people are very sort of concerned, emotional, and that's fair enough. And when you actually say, look, I know what you're going through, and they say, oh, how could you? And then you explain. It's amazing how it's not just the fact I've been practicing, but that you're actually experiencing what they are, and to a greater degree. And when you tell them you're in, 24 hours pain, it does change your attitude when you say, this is what works, because that's what I do. So they do take notice.
Great, Con. Thank you for that. Thanks for your question, boys. I'll bring it home now with my blog post. And I thought I would begin by just observing where we are now. So at the time of recording, it's the 30th of October, and things are opening up in Victoria. So a couple of days ago, people going crazy at Kmart at midnight. There's just a sense of pent-up angst, and people are just wanting to rebound back to normal, let's say. And with that, I think we've all found a bit of an appetite to change up our normal routine. We used to enjoy getting to the gym, going to the cafe. Now we're being a bit more of a homebody and training it at home in the garage, like Harvey. Mike's going off for a run, and Con's still continuing to do the things that he enjoys on his land. For me, I've been continuing with what works for me because of my home situation. And, amongst the boys here, it's interesting because we got two young, sprightly blokes here in RV, and we got Mike, who's due to take the next stage in his life, and we got Con, who's an older Australian enjoying himself. I'm right in the middle. I'm kind of heading towards midlife crisis territory, So, and I'm okay with that. I'm open with that. It's all good. And my personal situation is I've got 3 young kids at home, and it's not an excuse. It's just the reality of people in this like 30 to 50 age group that have kids, and they generally take the priority of your life. And so with my personal story, my wife Belinda and I, we prioritize ourselves first. So if we're no good, then, we don't have a good home setup for our children and helping the community around us. So in my blog post, I've been doing things at home for the last 5 years. And the story behind that was, I'm a rugby guy. If you're a Polynesian, you generally don't have a choice. You play rugby. Which is physics in the end. The big bloke runs over the little bloke. And as a result, I suffered a lot of musculoskeletal problems, but the primary thing that stopped my playing career was concussions. So I couldn't run without getting headaches for 2 years. I had memory loss problems, some dramas. So I found that home strengthening with gymnastics. After a bit of a journey, I found that gymnastics rings, like body weight training, was really good for me. And I did low impact HIIT training on a bike. So in the blog post, I demonstrated, there's a couple of videos in there, gives you a real account. You can see my home setup at home. It's nothing fancy, but I'm now growing towards a bit more lifting. Avi and a lot of the guys that he's been following has been having a real good influence on me. So it's not that I've shied away from strengthening, like lifting weights. It's more so that I just wanted to find the pieces to the puzzle that I can just plug in and play. So that way I can allocate enough time for my health, but then spend time with family and do the other things that we all enjoy. So, for those of you that are parents, I have a big interest in chronic health disease because early days we're young and sprightly. You can pretty much do what you like, eat what you like. You don't really suffer for it generally. But then in this age group where other priorities come into the scene, and then as you head towards your 50s and later stages in your life, things come to a head. But that's not an overnight situation. It's usually built up over time. You can get snapshots of blood tests. You might feel a bit strange, like, your heart skips a beat. You may not pay attention to those signs in your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s. But a real mission of mine right now is paying a lot more attention to that and shining the spotlight on chronic health disease, but not for older Australians, which is obviously important, but for also middle and younger Australians too, because we all want to enjoy ourselves as long as we can, have a great health span. And in my blog post for my home-based, building your own home body, that's what works for me. If you're a similar person to me, a few young kids running around, but you're trying your best to stay healthy. So yes, I'm happy that COVID's lifting. I live a bit further out in Gisborne, which is in the Masson Ranges. So it's we've already had 4 weeks of halfway freedom, so which has been good. So I'm happy for our Melbourne-based community to taste a bit of freedom too. So that's where I'm at right now. All right, guys, give it to me. What questions do you have for the midlife crisis?
Okay.
Hey, go on, far away.
You know how you said you were getting concussion even when you were running and headaches? How long did you have that? Was it still ongoing after you stopped playing rugby?
Yeah, mate. So I stopped playing in 2014, and I had intense headaches for about 2 weeks, those first 2 weeks. And then anytime my head would jolt, like if I looked over, I had this vague like pressure in my head. And when I tried to run, the jolting of the brain in my skull just caused inflammation, and the pressure gave me headaches. So for 2 years, I couldn't run because of headaches. So even when I went swimming and the waves would crash against my body, it would give me headaches. If I jumped onto my bed, it gave me a vague headache. And I'm not trying to pull the violin out. It's just that was what I chose to play and enjoy rugby. But those were the war wounds for me.
What are you like now?
I can run now. There's no problems. I'm doing like some stuff on the gymnastics rings where I'm landing, and a lot better. So part of it was the gym training and finding other things to not hurt my brain. And then other parts were reducing chronic inflammatory signs. So reducing the chance of anything that may cause inflammation has been really helpful for me. Largely diet and lifestyle choices.
Wow.
All right.
Thanks for sharing.
I have a question. Maybe this is for everyone. I just wanted to ask this question because I do get asked it a fair bit as well. I just wanted to hear everyone's thoughts on it. It was more strength training and more so that supplementation. What are your thoughts on like the whey protein powder and like pre-workout and stuff like that? Does anyone consume any of those? And just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts.
When I was a teenager, yes, definitely. But now I actually prefer to have a well-balanced diet, and I'll take some vitamin supplements, but I think a way of life is better than taking supplements for me. I will take some vitamins, but I think it's essential that you integrate it into the way you live, exercise, diet. That's more, for me, leads to a more complete sort of lifestyle.
Cool. Thanks, Con. What's on your plate, Mike? What are you getting up to?
Yeah, I think like what Con said, it depends on what stage you're at and what your goals are, because I think the point of the supplementation, particularly protein, is it's pretty hard to consume the required amount if you're, trying to build or you're trying to lose weight. I can't remember what the exact measurement is for your optimum protein intake for whatever your goal is, but it tends to be quite high to hit. So if you're thinking about all your meals, it's pretty hard to kind of consume all that type of protein. So I think in that regard, it's handy to use. Me myself, I did use it before, but these days not really. There isn't much use for it. I can generally get everything I need on my plate. And in terms of pre-workout, I tend to veer away from that as much as I can. I don't know too much about it, so I guess if I knew a bit more kind of what the long-term effects would be, then yeah, I'll dabble in that.
Cool. What about you, Avi? Are you supplementing?
Yeah, so I only take my protein just because it goes well with my oats with the flavour. But otherwise, I wouldn't actually take, because I get enough protein from my other foods like chicken, beef mince, and all that. So I hit protein pretty easily because I'm a big eater and I always got to be eating. So Lecky probably sees me eating all the time whenever he pops by. So go on and off between the pre-workouts because I feel like I train a lot better. And I don't go like the high caffeinated stuff. It's just more that has like more the BCAAs and all the and a little bit of caffeine to get me going because I don't drink coffee regardless. But I perform a lot better in whatever I do, so I do take it myself.
Cool. Yeah, just to touch on that, like, so if your perspective is getting strong and lifting and things like that, then there's going to be things that can help prepare your body. If you're a marathon runner, the way you train and fuel your body will be different from synchronized swimming. If you want to live forever and you have goals of reducing chronic inflammation and you're looking at longevity, then your goals may be different too. So I would say when I was lifting for rugby, which wasn't that much, I should have lifted more. I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't take any, but I would have thought that I would have liked to have prepared my body more. So I would have looked at the protein macros a lot more closely because I was always long and skinny. But right now I do supplement with I do supplement now just to help with a lot of the concussion signs and reducing inflammation. Things like cod liver oil, magnesium. There's a couple of different types of magnesium that I take. I take something called NAC. It's a glutathione precursor. It just helps with inflammation. So a lot of these pathways that I'm interested in as a biohacker for longevity comes from a basis of great lifestyle choices, just like Con and Mike were talking about, and looking closely at what my blood markers are. I'm just preempting next month's theme, but in men's health, I've gone through some personal testing and I'm going through some cardiovascular stress testing, keeping a close eye on my heart. And again, it's just because I'm really interested in what my numbers are, because on the outside, you may look really good, but the picture on the inside is quite different. So I'm not this is an interest. It's something that I'm professionally interested in as well and self-educating. But, I don't want to speak too much about that. We can potentially touch on this next month. But I just want to bring this home now. And, I would say that this roundtable chat today was quite successful. It's good to have sort of I was going to say the four musketeers, but I think it's the three. But it's good to have the four fellas together and sharing our thoughts. And I hope you guys at home enjoyed this roundtable chat. We'll see you again at the end of next month, November, when we go through men's health. All right, these are the boys signing off. Have a great weekend, and freedom from Victoria. Let's go. See you guys. Bye.
Bye guys. Take care.